Hello, everybody.
And welcome back.
This is the Downbelow RPG Developer Discussions.
I'm Steve.
I'm Ian.
And we have covered a variety of subjects in the past, and even in the past couple of days. We're going to launch into another multi-parter on something that appears in a lot of games. Hopefully this advice is going to be good for you no matter what you're doing. That's actually something that we are trying to do, is not just give advice that's useful for our system and our setting, but stuff you can take elsewhere, because nobody just plays one game.
And with our game, this subject is particularly important. There is a border between when do you use the system and when do you just keep the narrative rolling without invoking the system. In other games, this is when do you roll the dice, or when do you spend points sometimes as well. But in our system, it's purely when do you get called on to spend a success or take a failure, and when does that not need to enter into it?
So, now that we've described it in various terms, let's actually take a look at what is probably the example of this in gaming. If you don't know what the example is, this is your word for the day. Go look it up. Don't worry, we'll be here when you come back. Possibly the example of this in gaming is the riddle contest. In many classic fantasy adventures, the hero is engaged with a sometimes neutral, sometimes evil, sometimes even benevolent gatekeeper of sorts, whether this is Bilbo Baggins in the Goblin Caves meeting Gollum, or simply one of the Greek heroes meeting the largely neutral but will still eat you Sphinx, who proceeds to ask a riddle or engage in a game of riddles that the hero must puzzle out. In fiction, this is a chance for the hero to show his cleverness or occasionally to struggle with their intelligence as they try to figure it out. An excellent example of that, one of my favorites, still remains the riddle contest in The Hobbit, where Bilbo is reduced to literally grasping for straws in his pockets at the end. But in a role-playing game, this causes some disconnect, some fuzzy gray areas between the character and the player. For instance, if your player is Bilbo Baggins and the GM has you going up against Gollum in a contest of riddles,
do you have to roll a wisdom check to get the riddle, even if the player figures it out the first try?
Or do you have to figure it out even if you roll a wisdom check successfully? Or can I just roll a wisdom check and skip this role-playing because I want to kill some goblins?
So there's a lot of different answers in different gaming settings.
And the ultimate right answer is going to be, do what feels right for your group, however.
But before we go into details about riddle contests, players figuring things out, etc., there is another example. Yes, we said that was the example, but actually this is a problem that comes at you from two different directions at once. It comes at you from the players having their own skills and knowledge direction, which we are going to talk about in a future episode, and it comes at you from the what makes sense to be a story challenge, a system challenge angle. The proto-example of this is crossing the street.
Yep.
Normally, you would think that walking across the street is just a mindless task that you narrate, you go there, you get there. But occasionally, it's going to be different. Maybe the GM has decided that there's an out-of-control vehicle barreling at you. Or maybe the GM just wants to slowly ramp up the tension by making you have to see whether you get through the dense traffic at all quickly.
Occasionally, precise timekeeping, such as the 15 seconds it will take to cross the street, is actually going to be vital to something. Now, this is again something we're going to talk about very soon, and we're front-loading you. This is kind of like a table of contents in a way.
But what we're defining here is that there is a border between do and do not use the system. In the case of the Downbelow RPG, do you ask for traits and cost traits from characters? And if they don't have traits to use, give them a failure which recharges traits, because all of that is involved if you do a system challenge. Or do you just let it flow?
So that's where we're going to leave you with today, with a preview of what's coming up now that we've identified the fact that there is a division. We're going to look a lot closer at where the division lies for different sorts of campaigns in different situations. Specifically, the big two, when to use system resources on the one hand, and when to predominantly reward player skill on the other hand, and possibly some more over the next couple of days.
So thanks for sticking with us here in the underground portion of society, in our dystopian future. Please subscribe, like, comment. We love comments.
Comments give us ideas.
Patreon gives us survival. So please help us out, or at least see you next time.